Welcome back, Coinology. Imagine holding something so small, so ordinary, that most people would never even bend down to pick it up if it fell on the ground, and yet that same tiny object has been whispered about in collector circles, debated in auction halls, and hunted for decades with the hope that it could be worth more money than most people will ever see in a lifetime. A single 1-cent coin. A penny. Specifically, the 1993 1-cent coin. At first glance, it looks exactly like the millions of other pennies that passed through pockets, cash registers, school lunch lines, and coffee counters in the early 1990s. Copper-colored, familiar, almost invisible. But history has a strange habit of hiding extraordinary stories inside the most ordinary objects, and the 1993 1-cent coin is one of those stories. To truly understand why this coin has captured so much attention, you have to travel back to the early 1990s in the United States. This was a time of transition, not just culturally and politically, but also in the way money itself was made. The U.S. Mint had already changed the composition of the penny a decade earlier, moving away from mostly copper to a zinc core coated with copper. By 1993, billions of pennies were being struck every single year, flooding the economy with coins that most people barely noticed. But in the middle of this mass production, tiny variations, errors, and anomalies began to appear, and those anomalies are where legends are born. The standard 1993 1-cent coin weighs approximately 2.5 grams. That weight is not random. It represents the zinc core that makes up about 97.5% of the coin, with a thin copper plating forming the outer layer that gives the penny its traditional look. The diameter is about 19.05 millimeters, and the thickness is roughly 1.52 millimeters. These measurements might sound boring, but to a coin collector, every fraction of a gram matters. A difference so small that the human hand can barely feel it can mean the difference between a common circulation coin and a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. On the front of the 1993 penny, you see one of the most iconic images in American coinage history, Abraham Lincoln. His portrait has appeared on the penny since 1909, chosen to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. By 1993, this design had already been familiar to generations of Americans, yet it still carried deep symbolism. Lincoln's calm, steady gaze represents unity, perseverance, and the enduring ideals of the nation. Above his head is the word liberty, and to the right, the date 1993. Depending on where the coin was minted, you may also see a small mint mark beneath the date, or you may not. If the coin was struck in Philadelphia, there is no mint mark at all. If it was struck in Denver, you'll see a small D. In 1993, both mints produced enormous quantities of pennies. Philadelphia struck billions, and Denver wasn't far behind. Each of these coins was intended to be worth exactly 1 cent and nothing more. No one at the mint was thinking about million-dollar valuations or legendary rarities. And yet, history has proven again and again that intention does not control destiny when it comes to coins. Turn the coin over, and you see the reverse design known as the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. This design was introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The Lincoln Memorial stands tall and symmetrical, with its columns carefully engraved. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Above it are the words United States of America, and just below that, E pluribus unum, the Latin phrase meaning out of many, one. At the bottom, in bold letters, is 1 cent. Simple. Clean. Powerful. And now here's where the story begins to twist. Most 1993 pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. Even today, in circulated condition, they are common. You could search through rolls of pennies and find dozens without breaking a sweat. But collectors don't search for the ordinary. They search for the exception. And the 1993 1-cent coin has become famous not because of what it usually is, but because of what it might be under extremely rare circumstances. Over the years, rumors, auction records, and private collector stories have circulated about certain 1993 pennies that are worth staggering amounts of money. We're talking not thousands, not millions, but valuations that, in speculative discussions and legendary collector lore, reach as high as $398 million. Now, it's important to understand something very clearly: no normal 1993 penny is worth that kind of money. That number exists in the realm of extreme rarity, theoretical value, and unique error scenarios that would redefine what we know about modern U.S. coinage. So, what kind of penny could possibly reach such an unbelievable valuation? the answer lies in mint errors, transitional compositions, and coins that were never supposed to exist. One of the most talked about possibilities involves a 1993 penny struck on the wrong metal planchet. In earlier years, pennies were made primarily of copper. By 1993, that was no longer the standard. But imagine if, somehow, a leftover copper planchet from an earlier era found its way into a 1993 press and was struck with the 1993 design. That would create a coin that technically should not exist. A 1993 penny made of solid copper would instantly become one of the rarest modern US coins ever discovered. Collectors pay enormous premiums for coins struck on the wrong planchet. And when the date is modern, the rarity becomes even more shocking because minting processes by that time were highly controlled. A mistake like that would not just be an error, it would be a historic anomaly. Another possibility lies in double dies. A double die occurs when the coin's design is impressed more than once in a misaligned way, creating doubling in the letters, numbers, or images. On a 1993 penny, a dramatic double die on the date 1993, the word Liberty, or even Lincoln's profile would make the coin incredibly desirable. The stronger and more visible the doubling, the higher the value climbs. Then there are off-metal strikes, off-center strikes, blockage errors, and die clashes. Each of these errors tells a story about a moment when the minting process went wrong. A blank that was misfed. A die that was damaged. A coin that was struck while another coin was stuck in the press. These errors are like fingerprints of chaos in an otherwise perfectly controlled system. Now imagine a scenario where multiple extreme errors appear on the same coin. A wrong planchet. A strong double die. An off-center strike. A coin like that would be unique. One of one. And in the world of elite collectors, uniqueness is everything. When two billionaires want the same one-of-a-kind coin, the price stops making sense to ordinary people. That's where numbers like hundreds of millions of dollars begin to enter the conversation, not as guaranteed prices, but as theoretical ceilings driven by obsession, prestige, and competition. The 1993 1-cent coin also sits at an interesting point in history because it is modern enough that most people assume nothing special could exist, yet old enough that some mint records, dies, and internal processes are no longer easily traceable. That combination creates mystery. And mystery fuels value. Collectors around the world still search their change, still open old penny rolls, still inspect coins under magnification, hoping to find something that everyone else overlooked. A tiny detail. A slight difference in weight. A strange sound when the coin is dropped on a table. These clues can lead to discoveries that change lives, and that's what makes the 1993 penny so powerful as a story. It represents hope. The idea that something overlooked, something dismissed as worthless, could actually be priceless. That the next great discovery might already be sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten box in someone's home. In part 2, the story goes even deeper. We'll talk about how to identify potential high-value 1993 pennies, the exact errors collectors look for, how grading can multiply value overnight, and why the market for rare coins continues to explode even in the digital age. For now, remember this: every legendary coin started as ordinary pocket change until someone looked closer. Now let's go deeper, because this is the part where curiosity turns into obsession, and casual interest turns into a real hunt. This is where people stop seeing the 1993 1-cent coin as spare change and start seeing it as a puzzle, a mystery, and possibly the most valuable object they will ever touch with their bare hands. If you ever suspect that a 1993 penny might be special, the first thing collectors focus on is weight. This sounds simple, but it's critical. A normal 1993 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. That number should almost be burned into your memory. If your coin weighs significantly more, around 3.1 grams, that's when alarms start ringing. That heavier weight suggests a copper-based planchet instead of the zinc core used in modern pennies. A difference of less than 1 gram could mean a difference of millions of dollars. That's how insane the coin world can be. Serious collectors don't just use any scale. They use precision digital scales that measure down to hundredths of a gram. They repeat the measurement multiple times. They compare results. Because if a 1993 penny comes in heavier than expected, it could indicate a transitional error or an off-metal strike, one of the rarest and most valuable categories in numismatics. Next comes magnetism. A standard 1993 penny should not be magnetic. If a penny reacts to a magnet, something is very wrong, and wrong in the coin world often means valuable. While magnetism alone doesn't guarantee anything, it's another clue that the coin may not be what it appears to be. Then there's the sound test. This might sound almost ridiculous, but experienced collectors swear by it. When dropped gently on a hard surface, a zinc penny makes a dull sound. A copper-based coin rings with a slightly higher, clearer tone. It's subtle, but once you hear it, you never forget it. That sound can trigger a deeper investigation. After weight and composition, collectors move to visual inspection. This is where magnification becomes essential. Under a loupe or microscope, the smallest details suddenly matter. Doubling on the numbers in 1993. Doubling on the word liberty. Doubling on Lincoln's eye, ear, or bow tie. Strong, clean doubling is rare, and the more dramatic it is, the more valuable the coin becomes. A true double die is not the same as machine doubling, which is common and usually worthless. A true double die shows rounded, separated images, almost like shadows of the original design. It's a mistake that happens during die creation, not during striking, and that difference changes everything. Collectors also inspect the edges of the coin. A normal penny has a smooth edge, but unusual thickness, uneven edges, or signs of clipping can indicate errors like clipped planchets or incomplete strikes. A curved clip taken out of the coin, especially if it shows the Blakesley effect on the opposite side, is a strong sign of authenticity, and error coins. Off-center strikes are another major category. If part of the design is missing and the coin was struck significantly off-center while still showing a readable date, value can jump dramatically. The more off-center it is, as long as the date remains visible, the better. A 50% off-center 1993 penny with a clear date would already be extremely desirable. Combine that with another error, and now you're talking about elite-level rarity. Then there are die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly outlines of one side on the other. These marks can look strange, almost like hidden images beneath the design. Die cracks, cuds, and retained cuds also fall into this category. These are signs of dying dies, literally breaking apart under pressure, leaving raised blobs or cracks on the coin. Each one is unique, and uniqueness drives value. Now let's talk about condition, because condition can multiply value in ways that seem almost unfair. A rare error coin in poor condition might be worth thousands. The same coin in pristine, uncirculated condition could be worth hundreds of thousands or more. Grading is everything. Professional grading services examine coins under controlled lighting and magnification. They authenticate the coin, confirm the error, and assign a grade. That grade becomes the coin's identity in the marketplace. A high-grade error coin from 1993, sealed in a grading holder, instantly becomes a museum-level artifact, and this is where the market psychology kicks in. The rare coin market is not driven purely by metal or age. It's driven by stories, scarcity, and status. Billionaires don't buy rare coins because they need money. They buy them because they want something no one else can have. A unique 1993 penny error would not just be a coin, it would be a conversation piece, a trophy, a symbol of owning a piece of controlled chaos from the modern US Mint. That's how numbers like $398 million even enter the discussion. Not as face value, not even as realistic average value, but as an extreme upper limit in a hypothetical scenario where a one-of-a-kind coin appears, is authenticated beyond doubt, and becomes the object of desire among the world's wealthiest collectors. Auction houses thrive on this kind of drama. Two bidders locked in competition can push prices far beyond rational limits. Pride, ego, legacy, and fear of missing out all collide in the auction room. History has proven that when the right coin meets the right moment, records are shattered. What makes the 1993 penny even more fascinating is that many of them are still out there. Unlike ancient coins or medieval gold, these pennies were never locked away in vaults from the beginning. They circulated. They were lost. They were ignored. Some may still be sitting in old coffee cans, inherited collections, or forgotten bankrolls. That means discovery is still possible. Every year, new error coins are found. Sometimes by experienced collectors. Sometimes by complete beginners who just happen to look closer than everyone else. That possibility keeps the hunt alive, and that's why you should never rush when you find a strange penny. Never clean it. Never scratch it. Never try to improve it. Cleaning a coin can destroy its value instantly. Always preserve it exactly as you found it, because originality matters more than shine. If you ever believe you found something special, the next step is verification. Reputable coin dealers, numismatic experts, and professional grading services exist for a reason. They separate fantasy from fact. They protect both buyers and sellers. And sometimes, they deliver news that changes lives. The 1993 1-cent coin teaches a powerful lesson. Value is not always obvious. Worth is not always visible. And history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers, hiding inside the smallest, most overlooked objects. In Part 3, we'll dive into real-world discovery stories, how ordinary people stumbled onto extraordinary coins, how the online coin market has changed everything, and what the future might hold for modern pennies like the 1993 1-cent coin. Now let's talk about the human side of this story, because coins don't become legends on their own. People create legends. Curiosity creates legends. And sometimes pure accident creates legends. The history of rare coins is filled with stories that sound unbelievable until you realize they actually happened, and that's what keeps hope alive for coins like the 1993 1-cent piece. There are countless documented cases where ordinary people discovered extraordinary coins without ever intending to. A cashier counting a register at the end of a long shift. A child breaking open a piggy bank that hadn't been touched in years. A collector casually sorting through rolls of pennies bought from a local bank, expecting nothing more than a quiet evening hobby. In many of these cases, the person wasn't even looking for something valuable. They were just paying attention. That's the key word. Attention. One of the most fascinating things about modern era coins is that they often survive because people don't notice them. An ancient gold coin is instantly recognizable as something special. A modern penny is invisible. That invisibility is its camouflage. A strange weight, a slightly off-center design, a doubling that only shows under magnification. These things slip through hands again and again until someone finally pauses and asks, why does this look different? The internet changed everything for coins like the 1993 penny. Before online marketplaces and forums, rare coins often stayed local. A discovery might be known only to a small circle of dealers. Today, one photo uploaded online can spark global attention overnight. Collectors from different continents can analyze the same coin within minutes. Opinions clash. Theories explode. Excitement builds. This global spotlight is one of the reasons modern coins can achieve astronomical valuations. When demand becomes worldwide, scarcity becomes absolute. A unique 1993 penny error wouldn't just be rare in one country, it would be rare everywhere. Another factor driving massive valuations is trust. In the modern coin market, trust is everything. Authentication, grading, and documented provenance turn a curious object into a verified artifact. A certified coin tells a story that buyers believe. And belief is powerful. Once belief is locked in, price becomes secondary. This is why collectors obsess over original mint errors rather than damaged coins. Anyone can damage a penny after it leaves the mint. Heat it. Scratch it. Bend it. That kind of damage has no value. But a genuine mint error is frozen evidence of a mistake that happened inside one of the most controlled manufacturing environments in the world. That's what makes it special. The 1993 1-cent coin sits at a crossroads between old and new. It's not ancient, yet it's not recent. It comes from a time before ultra-modern tracking systems, when small irregularities could still slip through unnoticed. That window in history matters. It's why collectors pay attention to dates like 1993. Market psychology also plays a massive role. Coins are not just investments, they're emotional assets. People buy them to feel connected to history, to feel smart, to feel lucky, to feel unique. Owning a legendary coin is like owning a private piece of history that no one else can touch, and let's be honest, there's also the dream factor. The idea that a single cent could be worth more than mansions, more than private jets, more than entire companies. That idea is intoxicating. It pulls people into the hobby. It keeps them searching. This doesn't mean every 1993 penny is valuable. Most are not. But the possibility that one extraordinary example exists somewhere is enough to keep the legend alive. Legends don't need certainty. They need possibility. Another thing people often underestimate is how fast markets can change. A coin that sells for thousands today could sell for millions tomorrow if new information emerges. A newly discovered error. A confirmation of uniqueness. A wealthy collector deciding they must have it at any cost. Markets move on emotion as much as logic. That's why serious collectors don't just think about today's value. They think about future scarcity. As coins are lost, damaged, or permanently removed into private collections, the number of surviving examples shrinks. Scarcity increases. Interest grows. Prices rise. The 1993 penny also benefits from being relatable. Everyone has held a penny. Everyone understands its original value. That contrast between 1 cent and hundreds of millions of dollars makes the story irresistible. Media loves it. Collectors love it. The public loves it, and that attention feeds the cycle. The more people talk about a coin, the more desirable it becomes. Desire fuels competition. Competition fuels price. What truly separates legendary coins from ordinary ones is documentation. A confirmed discovery, properly recorded, graded, and presented, becomes part of numismatic history. It gets referenced in books, databases, and auction catalogs. Its story gets told again and again. That's immortality in the coin world. So if you ever come across a 1993 penny that feels different, looks different, or weighs different, remember this story. Remember that history doesn't always look old. Sometimes it looks brand new. Sometimes it looks like nothing at all. In the final part, we'll bring everything together. We'll talk about what the future holds for pennies, whether 1-cent coins could disappear entirely, and why that possibility could make coins like the 1993 penny even more powerful over time. Now let's look forward, because the future is where the story of the 1993 1-cent coin becomes even more intriguing. Coins are not frozen in time. Their meaning changes as the world changes around them. And the penny, more than almost any other coin, is standing on uncertain ground. For years, economists, politicians, and the public have debated whether the 1-cent coin even has a future. The cost to produce a penny has often been higher than its face value. That single fact alone has shaken confidence in its long-term survival. When a coin costs more than 1 cent to make, its purpose comes into question. And when a coin's purpose is questioned, its legacy begins to form. If the penny were ever officially discontinued, every existing penny would instantly become a relic of a closed chapter in monetary history. And coins from transitional periods, coins like those from the early 1990s, would gain even more attention. Collectors love end-of-era objects. They represent finality. They represent change. They represent moments that will never repeat. The 1993 penny sits safely in the middle of this narrative. It comes from a time when pennies were still everywhere, yet already under scrutiny. That tension adds weight to its story. It's not just a coin, it's evidence of how money evolved. Another factor shaping the future value of coins is digital currency. As cash becomes less common, physical coins become more symbolic. People begin to see them not just as tools for spending, but as artifacts. Objects you can touch in a world that's becoming increasingly virtual. That physical presence matters. Rare coins thrive in this environment. When money becomes invisible, the visible becomes special. A small copper-colored disc from 1993 suddenly feels more real, more grounded, more human than numbers on a screen. The collector base is also changing. Younger collectors are entering the hobby, often through online platforms, videos, and social media. They are drawn to dramatic stories, extreme rarity, and the idea that hidden treasures still exist in plain sight. The legend of a potentially priceless modern penny fits perfectly into that mindset. This new generation doesn't just collect for tradition. They collect for narrative. They want a story they can tell. And a 1993 penny that defies expectations is a perfect story. There's also the concept of rediscovery. Coins that were ignored for decades can suddenly explode in popularity when new research emerges. A new classification of errors. A newly confirmed example. A better understanding of mint processes. Knowledge reshapes value, and here's something most people don't think about: not all legendary coins have been found yet. History proves this again and again. Some of the most valuable coins in existence today were discovered long after their minting. Sometimes a century later. Sometimes by accident. Sometimes by someone who wasn't even looking. That possibility keeps the door open. It means that the final chapter of the 1993 penny hasn't been written yet. It's still out there, circulating in stories, in speculation, in hope. Maybe the ultimate example already exists, quietly stored away, waiting for the right moment to surface. Or maybe it hasn't been discovered at all. Either way, the idea alone gives the coin power, and that's the real lesson here. Value is not always about certainty. Sometimes it's about imagination combined with evidence. About rarity combined with timing. About a simple object colliding with human desire. The 1993 1-cent coin reminds us that history doesn't belong only to kings, empires, or ancient civilizations. It also belongs to everyday people, everyday objects, and everyday moments. A penny passed from hand to hand carries more stories than we realize. So the next time you see a 1-cent coin, don't dismiss it. Look at it. Feel its weight. Notice its details. Because history has a habit of hiding in places we least expect, and sometimes, just sometimes, a single cent can be worth more than the world ever imagined. At this point, the story of the 1993 1-cent coin stops being only about money and starts becoming something much deeper. It becomes a mirror. A reflection of how humans assign value, how myths are born, and how hope survives even in the smallest, most overlooked places. Think about it. A penny is the lowest unit of currency. It's what people give away without thinking. It's what children drop, what adults ignore, what entire economies barely acknowledge anymore. And yet, when rarity enters the picture, when history leaves a fingerprint behind, that same penny transforms into something powerful. Something symbolic. Collectors often say that coins are time capsules. The 1993 penny carries with it the sound of early 90s America. The hum of factories. The rhythm of cash registers. The everyday transactions that made up ordinary life. It's a piece of a world that didn't yet know smartphones, digital wallets, or contactless payments. That alone gives it cultural weight, but rarity adds electricity to that weight. When people talk about extreme values like hundreds of millions of dollars, they're not just talking about metal. They're talking about narrative dominance. The most valuable objects in the world are almost always objects with the strongest stories. Paintings, artifacts, manuscripts, and yes, coins. A hypothetical, confirmed, one-of-a-kind 1993 penny error would instantly become one of the most talked about numismatic discoveries ever made. Media coverage would explode. Experts would debate it endlessly. Museums would request it. Private collectors would compete for it. And once an object reaches that level of attention, it transcends normal market logic. It becomes cultural property, even if privately owned. This is why the idea of a $398 million penny doesn't sound as crazy as it first seems when you understand how value truly works at the highest levels. At that point, price is no longer about affordability. It's about exclusivity. It's about legacy. It's about being remembered. Some collectors don't just want to own rare coins. They want to be part of history. They want their name attached to something legendary. Owning the most famous modern penny ever discovered would guarantee that. There's also an emotional truth that can't be ignored. Searching for rare coins gives people purpose. It gives them patience. It teaches them to slow down and look closer. In a fast, disposable world, that mindset is rare in itself. Every collector remembers the first time they realized a coin could be more than pocket change. That moment sticks. It turns curiosity into passion. And passion builds communities, traditions, and lifelong pursuits. The 1993 penny represents the idea that discovery is still possible. That not everything has been found. That mystery still exists in a world obsessed with answers. That's incredibly powerful, and even if the legendary coin never appears, the search itself still matters. Because it changes how people see the world. It teaches them that value isn't always obvious, and that sometimes the most important things are hiding in plain sight. So whether you're a serious collector, a casual viewer, or someone who just happened to click on this video out of curiosity, take this story with you. Let it remind you to pay attention. To question assumptions. To look twice at things everyone else ignores, because history doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as something ordinary. A single cent. A date stamped into metal. A moment frozen in time, and somewhere out there, maybe, just maybe, the most valuable penny ever imagined is still waiting to be seen. By now, the penny is no longer just a coin in this story. It has become a symbol of possibility. And symbols have power far beyond their physical form. The 1993 1-cent coin stands at the intersection of chance and choice, of randomness and intention, of what was meant to be ordinary and what accidentally became extraordinary. What's fascinating is how many people underestimate the role of patience in discoveries like this. Rare coins are not usually found by rushing. They're found by slowing down. By sitting with a pile of coins longer than anyone else would. By caring when there's no obvious reward. That patience separates curiosity from commitment. In the coin world, patience is a kind of currency. People who spend years learning details, mint processes, die varieties, historical context are the ones most likely to recognize something unusual when it appears. To everyone else, it's just another penny. To them, it's a question mark, and questions are where value begins. The 1993 penny also forces us to confront how fragile certainty really is. We like to believe everything has already been catalogued, measured, priced, and explained. But history proves that belief wrong again and again. New discoveries don't ask permission. They just appear. Even today, mint records are not perfect. Dies are reused, modified, retired, and sometimes poorly documented. Human systems always leave room for error. And wherever error exists, rarity can be born. That's why serious collectors never fully close the door on possibility. They work with probabilities, not absolutes. They know that even a modern coin can surprise the world under the right circumstances. There's also a philosophical side to all of this. The idea that something created to be worth almost nothing could become priceless challenges how we think about worth itself. It asks uncomfortable questions. Is value intrinsic, or is it assigned? Does rarity create importance, or does importance create rarity? Coins don't answer these questions directly, but they force us to ask them, and that's why stories like the 1993 penny resonate far beyond the collector community. They tap into a universal human desire, the hope that something small can matter. That overlooked things can still surprise us. That destiny doesn't always announce itself loudly. The future will continue to reshape this story. As fewer people use cash, physical coins will slowly retreat from everyday life. And when something disappears from daily experience, it doesn't vanish, it transforms. It becomes memory. Artifact. History. At that point, every surviving penny becomes a witness to a vanished system. And within that population, the rarest examples rise even higher, because they represent not just a time, but an exception within that time. This is how legends mature. Quietly. Over decades. As context changes, meaning deepens. The 1993 1-cent coin may never again be just a penny in the way it once was. It now carries a story, whether it's in a collector's vault or still circulating unnoticed. And stories, once created, don't disappear. They wait for the right person. The right moment. The right pair of eyes. So if there's one lasting takeaway from this entire journey, it's this: don't underestimate the ordinary. Don't assume the obvious is complete. And don't believe that all treasures have already been claimed, because sometimes history isn't buried deep underground or locked behind museum glass. Sometimes it's already in your hands. A single cent. A date. A quiet possibility, and the reminder that the smallest things can carry the biggest stories. At the very end of this journey, something interesting happens. The coin fades into the background, and the person holding it comes into focus. Because every legendary object ultimately reflects the human being who noticed it. The 1993 1-cent coin doesn't change the world on its own. Someone has to see it differently first. That moment of recognition is powerful. It's the instant when routine breaks. When the hand pauses instead of moving on. When the mind asks a question instead of assuming an answer. That single pause is where discovery lives. Most people spend their lives moving past small things. We're trained to chase the big, the loud, the obvious. But history often rewards the opposite mindset. The quiet observer. The patient examiner. The person willing to believe that the story isn't finished yet. In that sense, the 1993 penny becomes almost philosophical. It represents the idea that value is not fixed. That worth can change based on context, knowledge, and time. A penny in 1993 was just money. A penny decades later becomes evidence. A clue. A survivor of an earlier system, and survival matters. Coins disappear every year. They're melted, lost, damaged, discarded. The total population shrinks slowly but relentlessly. What remains becomes more meaningful simply because it endured. Time itself becomes a filter, leaving behind fewer and fewer witnesses. This is why modern coins should never be underestimated. They haven't finished aging yet. Their story is still unfolding. And the 1993 1-cent coin is right in the middle of that process. Somewhere in the world, there are people who unknowingly own coins that future generations will talk about with awe. Not because those people were rich or powerful, but because they were lucky or attentive or both. History doesn't always choose its guardians carefully. Sometimes it chooses them randomly. That randomness is what makes stories like this irresistible. It means the door is never fully closed. That discovery is still democratic. That you don't need privilege or access to participate, only awareness, and even if the legendary, priceless 1993 penny never surfaces, the idea of it still changes behavior. It encourages people to look closer. To learn. To slow down. To appreciate detail. That alone has value, because attention is rare. In a world flooded with information, giving attention to something small is almost an act of rebellion. And that rebellion is exactly what uncovering rare coins requires. So maybe the real treasure isn't the coin itself. Maybe it's the mindset it creates. A mindset that sees potential where others see nothing. That recognizes that history is still being written, even in places we assume are finished. The 1993 1-cent coin is a reminder that the past isn't distant. It's tangible. It's still here. Still circulating. Still waiting to be understood, and if nothing else, it proves one unforgettable truth: greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides. Sometimes it looks exactly like something you've seen 1,000 times before, until the day you finally look at it differently. A single cent, a quiet year, and a story that refuses to end. And even now, after everything that's been said, there's still a strange silence surrounding the penny. Not because the story is over, but because stories like this never truly end. They linger. They echo. They wait for the next chapter to be written by someone who doesn't even realize they're about to become part of it. Think about how many hands a single 1993 penny might have passed through. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Each hand carried a different life, a different moment, a different story. Groceries paid for. Phone calls made. Bus rides taken. Small transactions stacking into the invisible machinery of everyday life. And through all of that, the coin remained unchanged, quietly absorbing time. That's what makes coins different from almost anything else we own. Clothes wear out. Electronics become obsolete. Paper decays. But coins persist. They move forward through generations, untouched by trends, carrying the same markings they had the day they were born. The 1993 penny was struck in an era when no one imagined how quickly the world would change. Before social media reshaped attention. Before digital payments replaced cash. Before worthless coins became symbols of debate. It belongs to a moment that didn't know it was about to become history, and that ignorance is powerful, because value often comes from contrast. What was once common becomes rare. What was once ignored becomes desired. What was once dismissed becomes legendary. This is how myths quietly form. Not through exaggeration alone, but through time doing its work. Through loss. Through disappearance. Through memory. Every year that passes without a definitive, world-shaking discovery only adds tension to the story. It makes people wonder. It makes them imagine. And imagination, when shared by millions, becomes momentum. Momentum is what turns a rumor into a legend. Somewhere there may be a coin that doesn't quite match expectations. A 1993 penny that weighs wrong. Sounds wrong. Looks wrong. A coin that feels like it doesn't belong with the others. And that feeling, that subtle sense of difference, is often the first signal of something extraordinary. Most people ignore that feeling. They put the coin back. They move on, but history belongs to the people who don't, the ones who stop, the ones who check again, the ones who ask why. That's how discoveries happen. Not with certainty, but with curiosity, and even if the ultimate coin never appears, the chase itself becomes a kind of legacy. It keeps people connected to physical history in a world that's drifting toward the intangible. It keeps attention alive. It keeps wonder alive. So maybe the greatest value of the 1993 1-cent coin isn't measured in dollars at all. Maybe it's measured in moments of pause. In questions asked. In eyes trained to see detail instead of distraction, because once you learn to see value in something as small as a penny, you start seeing it everywhere, and that kind of vision never stops paying dividends. As the story begins to settle, something subtle happens. The excitement quiets, the speculation softens, and what remains is reflection. This is where legends stop shouting and start lasting. The 1993 1-cent coin no longer needs hype. Its power now lives in what it represents, because long after prices fluctuate, after debates cool, after trends fade, the idea remains. The idea that something small can matter. That meaning can grow with time. That history doesn't always come wrapped in grandeur. Coins have a way of teaching patience without saying a word. They don't rush. They don't age quickly. They simply exist, moving steadily through time, indifferent to human urgency. The 1993 penny has already outlived countless technologies, fashions, and headlines. And it will likely outlive many more. That endurance is quiet, but it's profound. Every generation decides what it values. And often, it's the next generation that truly understands the significance of what the previous one ignored. That's how objects evolve from tools into artifacts. From currency into culture. One day, the year 1993 will feel distant. Not old enough to be ancient, but far enough to feel unfamiliar. And when that happens, coins from that year will no longer feel modern. They'll feel historical. Tangible proof of how people once lived, paid, traded, and trusted. At that point, even the most ordinary penny becomes a witness, and witnesses matter. They don't change the story, but they confirm it. They tell us, this happened. This existed. This world was real. In an age where so much is digital and temporary, that kind of proof becomes priceless in its own way. So maybe the true ending of this story isn't about discovering a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Maybe it's about realizing that value doesn't always announce itself with numbers. Sometimes it arrives as perspective. A penny from 1993 reminds us that time is the greatest multiplier of all. Not just of price, but of meaning. What survives time gains weight. What endures gains respect, and as this journey fades, the image that remains isn't a vault, an auction, or a headline. It's a hand holding a small copper-colored coin. Turning it over. Looking closer. Seeing more than just 1 cent, seeing possibility, seeing history, seeing wonder, and once you see the world that way, you never really stop looking. The story doesn't end here. It simply waits for the next pair of curious eyes. And now, the story finally comes to rest, not because there is nothing left to say, but because every story needs a place to breathe. The 1993 1-cent coin returns to silence, to pockets and drawers, to jars and boxes, to places where ordinary things wait without knowing what they are, and nothing dramatic happens at the end. No sudden discovery. No flashing headlines. No vault doors opening. Just quiet understanding, because the truth is, most legends don't end with certainty. They end with awareness. The penny remains small. Light. Easy to overlook. It hasn't changed. What changes is the way it's seen. Once you understand its story, you can never see a coin the same way again. Every scratch becomes a memory. Every date becomes a doorway. Every detail becomes a question instead of an answer, and that is the real transformation. The idea that a single cent could carry history, mystery, and possibility reshapes how value itself is understood. It teaches that worth is not always loud. That importance doesn't always demand attention. That sometimes the most meaningful things are the ones that survive quietly. The 1993 penny doesn't promise riches. It offers perspective. It reminds us that discovery favors those who slow down. That curiosity is still rewarded. That the world hasn't revealed all its secrets yet, and maybe that's enough, because even if the legendary coin never appears, the mindset it creates already has value. It turns ordinary moments into opportunities. It turns routine into reflection. It turns overlooked objects into stories waiting to be told. So when this video ends, and the screen goes dark, the story doesn't disappear. It follows you. Into your pockets. Into your change. Into the next small object you almost ignore, and maybe one day, without even realizing it, you'll pause. You'll look closer. You'll feel that quiet question form in your mind, and in that moment, the story begins again. A single sentence, simple year, and a reminder that wonder is never gone, it's just waiting to be noticed.